So why don't more people write books? When I tell people I'm a writer, one of the most common responses I get is, "Oh my goodness, I've always wanted to write a book." To which I always respond, "You should. Why haven't you?" I think there's a million reasons why people don't write their books, but I also think that most of those reasons are not very good ones. So I'm going to start a 3-part mini-series on the Yet podcast where I explore what I think are 3 of the biggest reasons that people don't write their books. Because I believe that the world needs more great stories. And I think that your story is worth writing. So I want to do everything I can do to help encourage and inspire you to get started and to keep going. I'm calling it Bad Reasons Not to Write Your Book. Hey, my name's TC Burr. Welcome to Yet, a podcast created to encourage you to get your goal or idea out of your head and into reality. On this podcast, you'll hear stories, encouragements, tips, and ideas to help you write your book, start your business, launch your podcast, or whatever it is you hope to accomplish. Because it's not that you haven't done it, it's just that you haven't done it yet. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Yet podcast. Today on the podcast, we are wrapping up our 3-part mini-series called Bad Reasons to Not Write Your Book. So I've talked to a lot of people lately, and a lot of people that I talk to tell me they want to write books, but many of them don't for a number of reasons. So in part 1 of this 3-part mini-series, we looked at the first reason why I think many people don't write, and that is fear of failure. That's a big one that plagues many of us. We think that we won't find success, that we'll be exposed as frauds, and so therefore we never get started or really make any progress on our book. And so I talked a little bit about how to interact with that one in episode 1. Episode 2, I talked about the next thing that keeps us from writing our books, and that is a perceived lack of time. And I say perceived because I think there's more hidden time in our schedules than we want to first admit or acknowledge, and talked a little bit about how to uncover some of that, how to leverage that, and how to use it toward writing your book. And today we're going to talk about the third reason why people don't write their book, what I think is one of the biggest ones, and that is a lack of community. Before we jump into that, though, I want to introduce myself just in case this is your first time listening to the Yet podcast. My name is TC Burr, and I am a normal guy. I'm a husband, a dad, a corporate employee. I spend my days going to work, my weekends, chasing my kids around sports fields and going to church on Sundays, and then I go back to work again on Monday. So I'm an ordinary guy, but for the longest time, I've had an extraordinary dream to write a book. And for most of my adult life, that dream has sat there on the shelf, just collecting dust. I didn't take any steps toward it. I didn't do anything with it. I just had this idea that one day, wouldn't it be cool to write a book? Eventually, I kind of resigned to the fact that, well, it's just not going to happen for me because, again, I'm not a writer. I'm an ordinary guy. And so for a long time, I just never did. But through the course of time, there were some things that happened where I kind of had this catalyst moment where I decided to do it. So I started writing my book about a year or so ago. I'm still very much work in progress on that one. But I've made a lot of connections with other writers and other people, had a blast, learned a ton. And through all of that, I decided to start this podcast because I believe that there are so many stories out there that have yet been untold, books that have yet been unwritten. And I want to encourage and inspire people that, hey, you don't have to wait until you're an empty nester or you win the lottery jackpot or whatever people think that they're waiting for to get started on your book. You can do it now. And more than you could do it, I think that you should do it because, again, as I've said before, the world needs more great stories. And I think that your story is worth writing. So today on the podcast, we're going to talk about one of the big reasons why I think people don't write their stories, and that is a lack of community. So why is community such a big deal? Well, I think for a lot of us, we think about writing, and at first it kind of comes across as a solitary endeavor, right? Like you have this picture of somebody sitting, for me, this is the picture that I get, and I've said this before, but I've got this picture of someone sitting in a cabin out in the woods, smoking a pipe, outside the rain or the snow is falling and you're all alone, just you and your computer or your notebook. You're just writing by yourself. It's a solitary thing. And parts of writing are solitary, right? Like you can certainly do much of the work of writing and putting thoughts down on paper by yourself. But there are other parts of the process where you're going to need other people. There are to get your book completed and published, you're going to need some people to read it. You're going to need some people to give you feedback on it. You're going to need people to provide line editing and development editing. And you're going to need formatters and cover design, right? There's no shortage of people who you're going to need to help you in your journey of writing and publishing a book. It really does, as the saying goes, take a village, and you're going to need to rely on other people to help you in that process. Some of those are going to be paid professionals, likely, and some of them are going to just be friends and family. But you need people around you, because at the end of the day, this is not a solitary endeavor, even though parts of it you do on your own. But all of that is to say nothing about who the real heroes of the writing journey are. And that is, in my mind, the encouragers. Those people who can, when things get hard, put an arm around you, remind you why you started this thing in the first place, and fan the flame of your creativity and your desire to write this thing so that you keep going. Because the reality is, you are going to have tough seasons and tough moments in your writing journey. Some of those days where you're writing are going to be super fun. The ideas are going to be free flowing. Everything you'll feel like you're hitting on all cylinders, and you're just in the zone. You're in the flow state. You're loving everything about what you're doing, and it's just going to be good. Ride that wave when you get there. But they're not all going to be days like that. They're going to be days where it's hard. There are going to be days when you read back over something that you've written and you wonder if you have any skill at all, and whether or not you should just give up and, pack up your manuscript and hang up your laptop and never touch it again, because who would ever read something like this? These are thoughts that I've heard on repeat in my own journey, and I've heard other writers talk about it as well. And in those moments, it's important to be reminded of, well, first of all, the fact that most of those are lies, and that you do have a talent. Your story is worth telling, and the people who can do that are the encouragers. And so, when things aren't going right, you're unsatisfied with your work, and you're unconvinced that you've got any talent to speak of, you might be tempted to throw in the towel completely. But in those moments, you really need people in your corner who can, again, remind you why you started doing this in the first place and encourage you to keep going. One of the terms that I've kind of kicked around in my own life is you really need a CrossFit community. Now, I don't know if you do CrossFit. I don't. And if I did, you probably would have heard me talk about it a lot by now. But I've talked to people who have done it. And what I love about the idea of the CrossFit community is that everybody's welcome. And everybody's there to encourage and invite people in. And it doesn't matter if you are the most fit person in the universe or if this is your first time ever working out. What the vibe that I've got from the CrossFit people that I've talked to is that they're all about just doing the workout, getting better, growing in community. And no matter where you are in the process, you're welcomed in, and they're going to celebrate your wins, even the little small ones, because they were there at one point. And, it seems like a very welcoming, like, let's all get better together kind of community. And I found that as a writer as well. So when I started my podcast, especially, I've met so many other writers and people kind of in the writing world. And one of the things that's been really overwhelming for me is the amount of support and community that I've found among other writers. Now, I'm sure there may be some grumpy people out there somewhere, but the people that I've crossed paths with online and elsewhere have all been people of various places in their journey, varying degrees of success or publication, but all of them have been cheerleaders of one another and helpers. They've wanted to share resources and ideas and encouragement. And I think that's just amazing. And so all writers, I think, need that. I've said this before on this podcast, and I really believe this to be true, that one of the big missing ingredients that keeps a lot of people from writing their book is encouragement. So where do you find this community? Well, I've got a couple of thoughts. This is not going to be earth-shattering, but hopefully it's helpful to think about in this category. So first, start with your inner circle. Consider your network of friends and family. Who among that group can offer you the most encouragement? So this could be a spouse, a parent, a child. Maybe it's your next door neighbor or a coworker. But the people, as you think about kind of the spheres of influence that you're in, who are the people that are closest to you? These are people who know you, who love you, who are supportive of what you're doing. And there may be somebody that's even coming to mind as we're talking about this. My encouragement to you, if there is, maybe it's a spouse or a parent or someone, reach out to that person, ask them, hey, I'm thinking about writing a book. What do you think? Would you mind holding me accountable and letting me share with you my journey and my process? My guess is that if this person really cares about you, you probably already know what they're going to say. Of course, they want to be able to help and encourage. So find who those people are and reach out to them. One kind of important note here, it can be incredibly helpful to have people who care about you, who are really close to you, read your work and give you feedback and encouragement. But it's also important to encourage them to be honest. So one of the things that I think sometimes people are challenged with is they share their work with, their mom or somebody really close to them. And, there can be this sense where, like, in that person's eyes, you can do no wrong. So they read through your work and they say, this is the best book I've ever read in my entire life. Go, you're ready to publish now. You might be. It might be the greatest book ever, and you really might be at that point where you're ready to publish. But the chances are, if it's a first draft, you're probably not. It might be really good, but it could be that person is unable to really give you any real feedback. So I think the last thing that any of us wants is to be like that person who auditioned for American Idol and who is just a terrible singer. But all throughout their life, nobody told them how bad. Like when I used to watch that show and I would see those auditions, and you probably know the ones I'm talking about, where like, how did they make it this far? It's kind of heartbreaking. Like, I know it's intended to be funny on the show, but it's heartbreaking to me that like this person actually believes that their work and that what they're doing is amazing, and no one told them like, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea. So start with your inner circle, but find people who are willing to be honest with you and maybe have that conversation with them up front. That's number one. So look inside that inner circle, find someone who you can really rely on and really lean on to be that encouragement for you. Another way you can look is to look a little bit outside of your inner circle, because for some people, your immediate family, that might be a little bit close to home. If you aren't comfortable asking them for help, or if you don't think they can be honest with you, look outside, a little bit outside. So think about your networks as concentric circles, right? So the next level out would be, people kind of on the periphery of your life. So these might be coworkers or neighbors or just people you interact with, maybe a little more casually, but who may be really interested in reading and providing feedback. So again, one of the ways that you can flesh out these potential, what I call allies, is to just start sharing that you're working on a book. You can do this in conversation or you can do it online, but the people who comment back or who lean in or who ask questions, these are indicators that these folks might be really great people to bring into your community, to share your journey with, and to get feedback and accountability and encouragement from. So I've said this, I said this earlier on this episode, I've met tons of authors, creatives, entrepreneurs while hosting this podcast. And really, a lot of them have become friends and encouragers for me. So one of the early goals that I had with this show is to create a network for other people to be encouraged and inspired and kind of spurred on in the work that they're doing. And I'm excited to say that, like, in a real way, that's happened. So like a lot of my listeners and a lot of my past guests and even people who haven't been on the show or maybe don't listen to the show have followed me online, and I've connected with them and found some real encouragement and community there. So don't discount online. I mean, there's nothing better than face-to-face in person, but don't discount your potential reach with folks you connect with online as well. So yeah, start with your inner circle, then maybe expand a little bit further. And also, if you've got the money, hiring a professional can help a lot. So that's one of the things I've done with my book. I've engaged a writing coach. This is someone who's got kind of a trained eye, who is a writer and an editor herself. She's reading through my book now, and in a couple of days, she's going to provide some feedback. So this is a little bit of different help and insight and feedback, because again, you're paying someone who's a professional who kind of knows what they're doing, knows what they're looking for, and really is familiar with maybe some of the patterns and pitfalls that authors typically fall into, that they can help identify and help you see that you might be blind to, being as close to the work as you are. So a quick word of caution here, though, do your research on people that you're going to exchange money with. There's one of the great things about the world of the internet is that you can connect with people all over the world at any point. And, the reach that you have in that way is so much more magnified than it has been even 20 years ago. One of the bad things about it, though, is that people can scam you, and people can kind of there's not a whole lot of credentials that's required for some of this work. And so you really want to do your research, talk to other people that writers who have maybe worked with editors or coaches or those types of folks, get references. A lot of coaches, a lot of people who are in this type of work will offer a free consult, or a free intro call. I would encourage you, if you're at all interested in working with somebody, go on that call. And a good coach or a good editor is going to be able to be patient and work with you and make sure you have a really full understanding of what they're offering, what they're not offering, what the price structure looks like. Get really crisp on that. I don't want you to lose money or waste money on something, but sometimes think about this as an investment. It's worth spending a little bit to get that good kind of professional eyes on your work. So a good, healthy community is going to look like a combination of close family, close friends, other writers, professionals. What it looks like for you is a little bit negotiable, but what's not negotiable, in my opinion, is having a community of people around you, people who are in your corner, who can encourage and just spur you on and help keep you accountable in your work. No matter how good of a writer you are, to find success, you're going to need feedback, accountability, and encouragement. And none of that is possible without having a network of people around you who can provide that for you. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this mini series. And if you have, let me know. I would love to do something like this again if you found it helpful. Send me a note. You can go to my website, tcburr.com. And as always, please rate and review the podcast, share it out with your friends, and let me know what you're working on and how I can best encourage you. Later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you would do me a huge favor, if you got value out of this podcast, which I'm assuming maybe you did since you're still here, would you scroll down to the bottom of your podcast app and rate and review the show? And maybe share it with someone on social media or with a friend, just in a conversation. It would mean so much to get this message out to more people, and I think it would be amazing if you would share it. So that would be, as a personal favor to me, I'd really love it. Also, if you want to know more about me and what I'm working on, you can visit my website. It's tcburr.com. I hope you'll check it out. You can contact me there. Thanks again, and I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.